A couple of days ago, my friend gave me some feedback on one of my videos. That feedback got me triggered. I had thought that I'd been working on this idea of feedback and my ability to receive criticism, positive or negative, and then just deal with it in a neutral way. I started asking myself, how do other people deal with feedback? Am I the only one who has a very difficult time just handling feedback that is not exactly positive? I started researching to read some articles to find out more about the subject, to see how do you deal with feedback? Who should you get feedback from? What kind of people should you listen to? And what do you do with unsolicited feedback? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. I'm going to be using the terms feedback, criticism, and even response interchangeably in this video, and all the links to all the articles that I read are in the description. The first time I came across that term was in journalism school when we were talking about, a messenger sending to a receiver, a feedback loop, and positive or negative feedback. And so I tend to almost always associate the idea of feedback with whatever response that comes from a message. So when I use the term feedback, what I mean is whatever you get. So feedback can be silence, feedback can be a scream, feedback can be an insult, feedback can be an affirmation. So feedback by itself is not a bad thing. And even when we talk about positive and negative feedback, the negative feedback doesn't necessarily have to be bad. And the perfect example that I saw to describe this was if you find somebody crying, right? If you come to a room and somebody's wailing, maybe they lost someone, they're grieving, and somebody says something to this person that reduces the impact of the tears, that is what can be called as negative feedback. If somebody says something that increases the impact of the tears, it's positive feedback. So negative feedback and positive feedback don't necessarily have to do with the negativity of the connotation, but whether an act increases or decreases. But that's probably where we're going to end with any technical terms about this thing, because I would like you to be able to use this content to make better decisions and not fall in the trap where you get triggered by your friends giving you feedback on your videos or your dress style. The first thing we need to consider about feedback in this particular instance is that not all feedback is created equally. I had my personal theory before delving into these articles that you shouldn't listen to everybody. But when you say you shouldn't listen to everybody, how do you know who you shouldn't listen to? How do you know who you should listen to? And a couple of ideas that I have that may help you in this process. Three main things can help you in deciding who you should be listening to or not listening to. The first thing is the credibility. And by credibility, I mean, what do they know about the subject? What is their history with the subject? Are they an expert in the field? As much as some of the articles it makes, and now as I established in the video, that you don't necessarily have to only listen to the experts, but it's good enough to be able to know, is this person talking from a place of knowledge? Because that alone can actually allow you to be able to not feel bad or feel insulted or take things too personally, as we're going to find out. So credibility is a key factor for me in deciding if I should listen to someone or not. Is the person speaking from experience? Are they speaking from a place of knowledge? The second thing that will allow me to do that, to listen to someone, is going to be the investment. And by investment, I mean, how invested are they in the outcome of whatever it is they're talking about? For example, if a parent gives you critical feedback, they're clearly invested in your success, as all parents should be, right? They want you to be successful as their child. So the reason why they might be harsh on you, they might be speaking in a particular way, is because they feel invested. If you don't succeed in life, they will have to pay the bills, they will have to keep taking care of you. If you pull that out to the job, if you have a supervisor who supervises you, they're investing in your success because your success is a reflection of their leadership skills. So that investment in the outcome is something that I would like to consider. Is the person giving me this feedback invested in the success? How are they invested in it? Is this something that will help them? Is it something that will benefit them? Or is it something that they can just speak because no matter what happens, it doesn't affect them in any way? And I think that the more invested someone is, the more likely you should listen to what they have to say. For example, what your spouse has to say about where you put your investments might be more important than what your best buddy at work has to say about it. And the last part in deciding who you should be listening to is their historical track record. And for me, this particular aspect, almost overshadows the idea of an expert. You have people who are coaches who don't know how to play. Like, they're coaches who can help you up your game, show you where to improve. They may not necessarily have the skills themselves to do it. So you can still be able to get feedback from people who not necessarily have done what you are working on, but have proven in the past that they are critically thinking, they are objective, they are observational, they are able to give you feedback that can actually help you improve in whatever person you want to improve. So three things when choosing the person you want to get feedback from. The first thing is their credibility. Second thing is their investment in the outcome. And the third thing is going to be a historical track record. the first thing to keep in mind is to consider the potential benefit. I think when somebody gives you feedback like my friend gave to me, I tend to think only of the negative aspects of why is he talking to me this way, or who does he think he is? He hasn't done anything to be giving me any feedback, right? But when you take the opportunity to pause and think for a second, what is the potential benefit that I have in this? What is the potential benefit of getting this feedback? That can open up areas in your mind where you'll be able to see opportunities where previously you hadn't seen. Consider the context. Put yourself in their shoes. If you were the one giving the feedback to someone else, or if you were, listening to this feedback from another perspective, would you still feel as bad as you feel right now? Because one of the things is that somebody can come and tell you something about a coworker or a spouse or a brother, or something that they have done, and you'll be able to objectively say things like, yeah, I think that was a stupid idea to invest in that thing that wasn't going to work out. But then when they're talking about you to you, you tend to think, oh my God, they're judging me. It's just me. But when you consider the context and put yourself in their shoes, if you were in their place, what would you say? And then look at it from their perspective. I know it's easy to say, yes, difficult to practice, but these are some things that could actually help you if you think about it hard enough and practice it over time. The next thing you need to keep in mind when handling feedback is to be appreciative, because sometimes people can give you feedback that you don't agree with. It happens to me almost all the time. People say things that I look at critically and say they don't know what they're talking about, they have no idea what they're saying, but I do appreciate them taking out the time to do it, because I don't think many people actually step out of their way to hurt your feelings. I think people actually want you to succeed, and if somebody can take the time to give you feedback, whether it's feedback that you agree with or not, being appreciative is a sign of maturity, and it is to recognize that they did the effort and you can see that. The final tip for handling feedback will be to ask open-ended questions. When you get to that place where you can get the context, you can put yourself in their shoes, you can be appreciative and mature, then ask open-ended questions. Ask things that will allow you to dig out more. In fact, I would even recommend that you help them make their feedback better, because sometimes they might say things that they did not know you actually had thought about. For example, someone might complain about your color grading or complain about your YouTube channel, and they have no idea that you actually plan to do things that particular way, and maybe discussing with them and asking them like, okay, when you said that this particular video was not as interesting as you had thought, what did you actually mean? Or when you said that I shouldn't use this particular font under this particular color, why did you say that? Asking open-ended questions can give the opportunity for the conversation to drag long, and also shows that you actually are invested in understanding, because it involves some skills, as we're going to see in the next section of the video, of active listening. As much as I'm talking about these things and it's positive and it's great and I feel excited, when my friend sent me that message, it wasn't that way. I mean, I responded split second immediately and told him how I felt about it. But then I got the time to think about the whole process of being triggered, having those emotions, having those thoughts, and then responding in this particular way, and then him responding like, okay, cool. It made me realize that no matter what we do, you cannot avoid feedback. If you say something and nobody responds, that's feedback. If you put up a video on the internet and nobody watches it, it's feedback. So we cannot avoid feedback. So what can you do? So even when I use the term unsolicited feedback, I could still remove the term unsolicited and it will still mean the same thing, because feedback is feedback. As we talked about in the initial definitions, it's anything that comes back to you as a response to something that you've done. So if you say something to someone and the person does not respond, that is feedback. So how do you deal with that? First thing to consider is very similar to what we did earlier, is consider that they may be giving you something that you're not yet aware about. Like, nobody knows everything. Nobody knows the world. We are all human beings. We have our flaws. We see things in our own perception. So just go into the mindset of, what if they are sharing something here that I'm not yet aware of, which makes you switch to that growth mindset, the learning mindset of wanting to learn and figure out what is it they're trying to say. So even if somebody shows up and tells you something like, in my videos now these days, I get a lot of comments about how I'm trying to get views by doing particular kind of videos and how stupid I am. And so I ask myself, you used to hurt my feelings now, it's just like, wow, okay, what can I actually learn from this? Does it mean that the topic I'm taking, I'm not addressing it properly because I'm trying to be positive and share this, beautiful message about the continent? But what is this person saying that I may not be aware of? Another tip will be to ask questions to get clarifications. For example, when somebody gives you all this feedback about your video and the edits and the color grade and all that, for example, you will say something like, if I understand what you're saying, does this mean that my video quality is lower because I'm using a higher ISO, and you would recommend that I should do this, this, and this? And then hear what they have to say. Not only does it show that you're putting in effort to actually listen, which is a key part of getting the information that this person is trying to give you, but it also shows that you're willing to talk about things. It shows a great level of maturity and understanding that you want to learn, you want to grow. It's not easy. I repeat that, it's not easy, but it's possible when you realize that your trajectory to get to where you want to go to takes a long time, and everything that you can get along the way to learn how to do it, adds up. The next tip will be to listen actively. This will mean taking into consideration the context, taking into consideration the intent, taking into consideration the feelings. So this is the part where you can try to sieve out people who are doing things out of malice, out of just being evil, or they just don't like you, because some people have the intention to hurt your feelings. Not everybody has the chance to try things out. Not everybody has the guts to go out there and make a video for themselves or write an article. So there are people, part of them wants to do what you're doing, but they don't know how to express that. They don't know how to come to you and ask, hey, how can I do this thing that you're doing? So they try to mock at you or try to give you feedback that actually isn't feedback. Understanding this active listening requires to understand the context, the intent, and the feelings. It's not just the what, it's also the how. Sometimes you have to ignore the how. You know, when the person is very invested, when the person is very credible, when the person has a good track record of giving good feedback, sometimes you have to just throw away the how. Like, yeah, they're harsh, they're probably insultive, but don't, because you don't want to get abused. Sometimes you can ignore the how, but in this particular case of active listening, try to find out more about the person. Are they saying these things because they have other, underlying motives of discouraging you or making you feel bad? Or are they just terrible at communicating? It's difficult to see that, which requires you to constantly be learning about human nature. But when you're able to be an active listener, to understand the context, where is this person coming from? What are they feeling? What is their intention? That allows you to be able to take in that information and use that for yourself. We're still dealing with unsolicited feedback. When you get all this information, if you still don't feel comfortable that this person is saying something that is real, try to find out from other people. Maybe there might be people around you who have dealt with this person. Try to see, is this person giving relevant advice to me? Is this just the way they speak to everybody? Is this something that I should actually pay attention to? If you have done your self-assessment and you've passed things and you're like, I don't think this is for me, let me verify with somebody else. So you can ask somebody who is a third party who is not even aware of this, like, what do you think of my video? What do you think of my article? You might be surprised that whoever was giving you the first, piece of unsolicited feedback was actually correct, and that allows you to have an opportunity to grow. And it brings us now to the next part of things, which is self-assessment. You need to be able to collect all this information and then look into yourself and see whatever this person is saying or these people, because sometimes you might be onto something that nobody is getting. You might be starting a trend that nobody else has picked up on it. So people might be criticizing and giving you feedback and giving you responses that are not the ones that you want to hear. If you're good enough at self-assessment, you might realize that it is very possible that at this particular point in time, you know what you're doing and they don't. So it requires a certain level of self-awareness and self-assessment that most people just don't have the time to cultivate in life. The final way to deal with unsolicited advice goes back to the beginning. You will get it whether you want it or not. Somebody's going to show up, someone's going to tell you how to do your life. So you need to be prepared. How do you prepare for it? Reading articles like this one, watching videos like this, subscribing to the channel, and reading more about storytelling and growth. So the way you prepare yourself for these things is by being aware that things will trigger you. And also, like what happened for me is being willing to catch those emotions. When you're uncertain about things, when you're afraid about things, when things trigger you and bring up your insecurities, that is a great opportunity for you to get into your psyche and wonder, what does this represent? Why do I feel this way? Is this something from my childhood? Is this something that happens to me in these particular circumstances? Was I just hungry? Do I just don't like this person? So it's very important to be able to look at yourself critically and observe yourself. Like over time, just see, how do you get these things done? And if you'd like to get help with that, I'll be more than happy to see what I can do. I've been thinking about a video to do that. So let me know in the comment section if you'd like to know about self-expression for personal transformation. I've been thinking about this concept. So let me know if you're interested in that. Now you have an idea of who to take feedback from. Then you figured out a little bit of how to handle that feedback. And then we'll move also to the advanced level of handling unsolicited feedback, because you will also handle unsolicited feedback. So what is the takeaway in this video? Because there's a lot that goes through the research to find out about this. There are many articles that I've written. I've put the relevant ones in the description. You can check them out. And if I had to leave you with one thing, it would be this quote from Hillary Clinton, where she said, take criticism seriously, but not personally. And there's a lot to unpack there, but the three main things that I would like you to keep in mind. One, not all feedback are created equally. You already know that. So you have to be aware to know how to differentiate between feedback you should listen to, feedback you should not listen to, and how to learn in either case. Two, all feedback, I repeat, all feedback has a potential for learning, whether it's feedback that you wanted, feedback you didn't want, feedback that was good, feedback that was bad. All of them contain potential for learning, and it's up to you to figure it out. And the final takeaway is giving, receiving, and using feedback. These are all skills that are very relevant for your personal growth as a human being, as a spouse, as a sibling, as an employee, employer. You need to be able to give feedback. You need to be able to receive it. As much as I hate to admit it, my friend was right. he did point out things that I should have needed to work on, things that I did not want to consider, things that I got triggered because I thought that I knew what I was doing or that I was too smart. But bottom line is that every single person that comes in our life that says something about us is trying to help us, even if you don't know how to do it, because if you were perfect, then nobody would say anything to you, right? So whenever somebody opens their mouth to give you feedback, whenever there's a comment on your video, you may not like the video. It could actually be very insulting and frankly quite abusive. But you get the opportunity to learn about the person, learn about yourself, and use all that information to grow. If you like this video and you would like to see these kinds of videos on the channel, my name is Kamga. I do essays, reviews, and reactions. And on this channel, I post weekly with Friday live streams. So as you're watching this video, it's going to be Thursday or whatever day it is in the future. And tomorrow is going to be a live stream. I'll be show up, tune in, let's chat about things, all right? And yeah, do your best. Let God take care of the rest. And I'll see you in the next video.